Panel data have a few advantages over time series and cross-sectional. First of all, panel data has more degree of freedom and more sample variability. Therefore, panel data improves the efficiency of econometric estimates. Second of all, panel data can eliminate the selection bias typically seen in cross-sectional. In cross-sectional, an individual is observed as either receiving treatment or not. This can result in first, selection bias due to differences in observable factors between the treatment and control group, and second, selection bias due to endogeneity of participation in treatment. But this wouldn't happen with panel data because it allows the possibility of observing the before and after effects on individuals, as well as providing the possibility of isolating the effects of treatment from other factors affecting the outcome. The third advantage is that the estimation of time adjustment pattern using time series data can often has to rely on arbitrary prior restrictions. But with panel data, we can rely on the inter-individual differences to reduce the collinearity between current and lag variables to estimate unrestricted time-adjusted patterns. The fourth advantage is that panel data generates more accurate predictions for individual outcomes by pulling the data rather than generating predictions of individual outcomes using the data on the individual in question. Panel data can learn an individual's behavior by observing the behavior of others. Thus, it is possible to obtain a more accurate description of an individual's behavior. The fifth advantage is that in certain cases, the availability of panel data actually makes computation easier than in time series and cross-sectional. For example, when a variable is truncated or censored, the actual realized value is unobserved. If an outcome variable depends on previous realized value and the previous realized value is unobserved, one has to take an integration over the truncated range to obtain the likelihood of observables. In a dynamic framework with multiple missing values, the multiple integration is unfeasible. But with panel data, this problem can be simplified by only focusing on the subsample in which previous realized values are observed. Fixed effects model explores the relationship between predictors and outcome variables within an entity, be it a country, a person, or a company. We use fixed effects if we're only interested in analyzing the impact of variables that vary over time, and it can be used to study the causes of changes within an entity. When using fixed effect model, we need to make sure these time invariant characteristics are unique to the individual and should not be correlated with other individual characteristics. Each entity is different, therefore the entity's error term and the constant should not be correlated with the others. If the error terms are correlated, the fixed effect is not suitable since inference may not be correct, and we need to model that relationship probably using random effects. In random effects models, the variation across entities is assumed to be random and uncorrelated with the predictor or independent variables included in the model. This distinction between fixed and random effect is whether the observed individual effect embodies elements that are correlated with the regressors in a model. In theory, to decide between fixed or random effects, we can run a Hausman test, but in practice, it is often believed that the random effects model is more appropriate when the entities in a sample can be thought of as having been randomly selected from the population, and a fixed effect model is more appropriate when the entities in a sample effectively constitute the entire population. Here is an example in finance about choosing between fixed and random effect. If we want to analyze and forecast the performance of a specific stock market, we will use a fixed model over random effect because the entity in a sample should include the entire population, which in this case is all the stocks traded on the specific stock exchange. Thank you for listening. That's all.